Hey guys, so the YouTuber Gigguk has recently released his new anime short film titled Baan, The Boundaries of Adulthood. And according to him, it's an animation he and his team has been working on for about 2 years now. When the film was first dropped a few days ago, I rewatched Baan a couple of times to really get what Gigguk was trying to say, but also identifying the little hints and details that truly makes this film his own. You know, when you see in the beginning of movies where there's usually a credit that says a Martin Scorsese film or a Christopher Nolan film. Well, today I'm going to talk about what makes this film a Gigguk film. Because there's a lot of stuff in here, surprisingly, for a project that's only 18 minutes long. And now, before we start, I would also like to mention that I'll only be showing clips from the trailer Gigguk himself has posted on his channel, as I really want everyone who sees this video to go and check out the full film themselves. It's less than 20 minutes long, and it's for free on YouTube, so please, if you haven't already, give Baan a watch. Also, I will be going into spoilers in this video, so again, if you have not checked it out yet, go ahead and do that and come back to this video. So with all that said, without further ado, let's begin. So before we dive in and really dissect Baan, I wanted to go over a few main basic points of stuff that I really liked and things that I thought could have been done better in the film. And the first thing that I wanted to point out was the music. The music was absolutely fantastic. Kevin Penkin did an amazing job with the soundtrack. The entire time I was watching the film, I was just mesmerized by his work. It was fantastic. I definitely think the soundtrack was the very best thing about this film, and Gigguk did a really good job of trying to really capture the vibe and the sound that he wanted to give off with the film. And I think it was definitely an amazing collaboration between both parties. Secondly, I think a lot of people will agree with me on this. Baan was a very visually impressive film. The entire time, I could not find a single flaw with the visuals in Baan. The animation was great. Visually, it was stellar. Even the dragon, I know on one of the Trash Taste episodes they were talking about how the dragon was CGI. I had no problem with it at all. I thought it looked great. Thirdly, I would like to mention the Southeast Asian influences. I thought they were very fascinating. I thought Euphania was a beautiful world. It was very interesting. I loved the creatures that we saw, and also the fact that the people have these special powers and they can fly. It was all cool to see, and honestly, I wish we got to see more of it, which that last point we'll get to a little later. Another aspect of the film that I really appreciated was the emphasis of visual storytelling. I can tell Gigguk really had a grasp on kind of the style of storytelling that he wanted to explore with the film. It was very show and not tell, and I really appreciated that. I felt like we learned a lot of things through little dialogue, which is very difficult to do, and I really commend Gigguk for being able to pull it off, because he was able to convey a lot of information very well within the span of like 18 minutes, even less considering that we're including credits within that runtime. So I very much praise Gigguk for being able to pull that off. Finally, I wanted to mention that I love the way both Daichi and Rin's stories connect. It was something that I did not expect, and it really allowed for a far deeper relationship than I would have really ever expected. Gigguk definitely went the right route with this one, and it was a nice change of pace, I guess. It definitely subverted my expectations, and I really liked that I was challenged as an audience member. Okay, so now let's get into some criticisms I have, and it's not much, but I think it's very important to kind of provide some constructive criticism for any future projects to come, right? That's with any piece of art. So my biggest critique with Baan was that it was too short, and I think a lot of people will agree with me on that. I've seen a lot of people say the same thing too, and I'll kind of go into a little bit more on why I believe that now, because I don't really see a lot of people talking about why they thought it was too short. But basically for me, for the ideas and concepts that the film was trying to discuss, I wish we just had more time to explore them and flesh them out. The potential was endless for the project. We only got to see a glimpse of Euphania, and I really wanted to see more of what the world consists of. But I think the issue doesn't just end there. I think because the runtime was too short, some plot points ended up being a little more confusing than I think Gigguk intended them to be. For example, the biggest example I have was the twist with Rin and Daichi, and I was slightly confused because with that twist, we were receiving too much information at once in the span of like 1 minute. Here we learned that there are these predatory creatures in Euphania that are attacking people and one of the flying dragons. And then we learned that Rin's parents were killed in this incident, and apparently Daichi was witnessing the event, leading to both Daichi and Rin meeting. Daichi then takes care of Rin and raises her till she's an adult, which then means that this whole time we've been watching both characters' lives at different points in time. And that was all in like just 1 minute. So that is a lot of information for just what was supposed to be this one twist. And so I definitely think they should have slowed things down a bit during that point in the narrative to really let us soak in all the information that's just been given to us. I know Gigguk stated that there was a limitation in terms of what was allowed for the runtime for the project, but I think that unfortunately ended up slightly hurting this part of the story. Okay, so now let's get into the nitty-gritty details of the main ideas I found in Baan and how it affects the overall narrative and themes the film is trying to explore. So I came up with 2 things: food and its relation to culture, and also the setting. I think the setting is also very important, and I'm pretty sure Gigguk was very particular with that for a reason. But first, we're going to go over food. Now, food is a very universal but also very personal topic, right? It's something that everyone loves and can relate to. But food is also what distinguishes us from each other and what makes our own culture so unique from one another. It's one of, if not the main thing, that makes your culture stand out. I'm Korean, so I'm also Asian, but Korean food and Thai food are very different from each other. Let's use curry as an example. Thai curry and Korean curry are very different from the flavoring, textures, and spices used in the dish, which is why I said food is a universal but also personal thing. It's something that we can all unite under and agree is amazing. We can all enjoy food, but at the same time, it's the food that we personally identify ourselves with through our roots that we love the most out of all the food in the world. Because of this, it's very fitting that when Rin goes home, the very last thing we see her eating is her father's curry, the thing that she loves the most about home. And I think Gigguk using food as an allegory for nostalgia was a brilliant idea because of all the things that we just discussed about. It's funny seeing him, Joey, and Connor have all these crazy food discussions on their podcast, and then now he's actually using it as a relevant piece to serve the story of his anime. Okay, so now that we covered the topic of food, let's move on to the setting. Now, what do I really mean by the setting? Well, let's just look at the genre of Gigguk's film. What is it? It's an isekai. Well, isekai is not really a genre, but you know what I'm trying to say. So because it's an isekai, that means the story takes place in another world. But in this case, it takes equal focus on both the other world and in the real world. So now it's very easy to just see this as, another isekai where there are 2 worlds, and that's it. But the purpose and the relationship between those 2 worlds runs much deeper than that, these 2 worlds being Euphania and Japan. Now, I am specifically mentioning Japan for a few reasons, which we'll dive into later on. But first, let's establish the difference between the 2 worlds and what makes them stand out. First, with Euphemia. Aesthetically, it has a lot of inspiration from Southeast Asian mythology, and it's a world very connected with the land and nature. So there's a very heavy emphasis on culture and history. The other setting is our world, and again, more specifically, Japan. And it's an environment that's more modern and contemporary. There's a bunch of skyscrapers, nice cafes, and everyone has a reliance on electronics. These details may be obvious, but again, they go even deeper to further push the message and themes of Bâan to the forefront. So let's briefly go over the full story of Bâan. It's essentially a story about a young woman named Rin who was adopted by her foster parent, Daichi, after her blood parents were killed. And so Daichi has raised Rin ever since she was little until now. And now, Rin leaves to another world so that she can repay Daichi for taking care of her. She's trying to start over and become independent so Daichi doesn't have the burden of worrying about her. Rin is essentially working towards her future to repay the debt of her past. And what is this world that she is looking to reside in while working for her future? That's right, our world, the modern, futuristic world with all this technology that's foreign to Rin. I think it's also crucial to mention that this setting is centralized in only Japan, which is why I kept mentioning it. To a lot of foreigners, Japan is seen as very futuristic compared to their homeland, and so it kind of makes sense that this modern world in Bâan is centered around Japan. But it doesn't stop there. Going back to the story of Bâan, through her journey of adulthood, Rin realizes the importance of her roots and begins to long for home. Eventually, Rin decides to return to her homeworld and be with Daichi again, realizing just how much euthania means to her. With this act, Rin is literally returning to her past, her roots, the environment she identifies herself with. And what kind of characteristics describe the world of euthania? Tradition, culture, history, all terms that are in relation to the past. And so these worlds were created with all those ideas in mind. I'm very confident Gigguk didn't just create euthania and use Japan as his second setting just cause he happens to be Thai and is now living in Japan. Of course, those are huge factors in why he chose those specific cultures to focus on. He literally mentions that this film is very personal to him, but he definitely put much more thought into it than I think a lot of people realize. It's quite fascinating the amount of creativity and brainstorming it took to tie all these elements together, and I definitely commend Gigguk and his team for pulling it off in a subtle but digestible manner. It's definitely a huge accomplishment to see one of the biggest anime creators on YouTube being able to fulfill his dream and work with Japanese studios. It truly is inspiring for me and other creators to see someone who doesn't have direct ties to Japan still being able to make his dream come true and become part of the anime industry, let alone create his own anime. I can't wait to see where the industry goes next. In this day and age, anything is possible. If you think about it, anime has changed so much within only 3 to 5 years, and I can tell Baan is going to be a gateway for more unique stories. It's definitely a small stepping stone for a bigger future down the road. Congratulations, Gigguk, on your first anime, and I look forward to more of your stories to come.